Aaron Kaufman had everything. A hit television show on the Discovery Channel, a nationally recognized garage, a boss who treated him as a genuine friend, and millions of fans who followed every car build with something close to devotion. Walking away from all of that was never going to make sense on paper, and that's exactly what made his departure from Fast and Loud so impossible to ignore. Before anyone can fully understand what drove Aaron out the door, the story of Gas Monkey Garage has to be told honestly, starting from the departures that came before his. Tom Smith and Jordan Butler were skilled mechanics who had built real connections with the show's audience over their time on camera, and both of them were gone before Aaron made his own decision to leave. Their exit didn't hit quite as hard publicly, largely because neither carried the same level of screen presence that Aaron did. But among viewers who followed the automotive restoration world closely, losing Tom and Jordan registered as a genuine loss. These weren't filler characters existing between commercial breaks. They were capable, sharp, and entertaining in ways that contributed directly to the garage's identity on television. When they disappeared from the show without explanation, the first wave of speculation began spreading across fan communities almost immediately, and it took considerable time before the real story found its way to the surface. Tom eventually agreed to sit down with TMZ, and what came out of that conversation reframed everything fans thought they understood. Nobody had quit. Nobody had walked away chasing a better opportunity, at least not as their first move. Richard Rawlings had fired them both, and the incident at the center of it was almost shockingly small in scale given how dramatically it ended. Rawlings owned a prized Rolls-Royce that occupied a different category entirely from the rest of his vehicle collection, kept at the Gas Monkey Garage, and understood by everyone in the building to be untouchable in any personal sense. One afternoon, a visitor came to the garage, a man dealing with a serious lung condition, who had spent time walking through the space and, at the end of his visit, asked quietly if he could take a photograph next to the car. Tom agreed without hesitation, reading the moment as exactly the kind of generous, fan-friendly gesture a welcoming garage should offer. Rawlings saw the photograph, and the response came fast and loud, which is almost too fitting a phrase given the show's name. Shouting followed, and Tom pushed back rather than absorbing it quietly the way a cautious employee calculating job security might have done. Jordan backed Tom up, and that combination of defiance was enough. Rawlings made the call, and both men were out. The Misfit Garage narrative that fans latched onto afterward was never the full picture, because that show wasn't a dream Tom and Jordan had been quietly building toward. It was the plan they assembled after suddenly having no other option. Fired Up Garage came later, the independent shop they eventually launched to compete directly in the same automotive restoration market as Gas Monkey Garage, and reports surfaced that Rawlings himself had invested in the venture, a pattern that would resurface in a different but equally telling form when the focus shifts to Aaron. None of what happened with Tom and Jordan, as dramatic as it was, prepared anyone for the weight Aaron's departure carried. Richard Rawlings brought the charisma, the deal-making energy, and the outsized television personality that drove the format of Fast and Loud forward week after week, but Aaron supplied the actual mechanical knowledge that made every build feel real rather than performed. Without him, the show wasn't just losing someone audiences liked, it was losing the person who gave the whole automotive restoration premise its credibility. A genuine friendship also existed beneath the professional relationship, built across years of shared work and real mutual respect, and that's what made the first assumption so predictable. Something catastrophic must have happened between them, some blow-up or betrayal, dramatic enough to end both the partnership and the friendship at once. What actually happened was more layered than that, and more honest than any explosive confrontation would have been. Aaron's exit was slow and deliberate, shaped by the kind of quiet, accumulating certainty that doesn't announce itself with slammed doors. The core problem wasn't a single incident. The format of the show itself had become a ceiling he kept pressing against. Fast and Loud was built on quick turnarounds and accessible builds, vehicles that could be completed fast enough to hold audience attention across a single episode, and for Discovery Channel that formula worked brilliantly. For Aaron, the same formula had become a slow form of suffocation. Custom fabrication at the level he actually cared about demanded patience, complexity, and creative latitude that a television schedule structured around speed simply couldn't accommodate. Every ambitious project he wanted to pursue had no place in the rhythm of the show, and raising the issue with his team clarified quickly that the format wasn't going to reshape itself around one mechanic's vision, no matter how central that mechanic happened to be. His personal history shaped how carefully he handled the decision to leave. Before Gas Monkey Garage, before any national recognition in the automotive world, Aaron had been working at a small local shop in Dallas where his abilities were largely invisible and his potential was going nowhere useful. Rawlings found him there, recognized what he was capable of, and that encounter genuinely redirected Aaron's life. The gratitude was real, and it's why the exit came slowly rather than all at once. He stayed longer than he probably needed to, working through how to leave without creating chaos for the people remaining, without making things harder than they needed to be. When the announcement finally came, Rawlings admitted he wasn't blindsided because he had watched the signs accumulating over time. The restlessness, the disengagement, the way Aaron's energy visibly faded on projects that held no interest for him. Personal friction had also developed between them alongside the creative disagreements, and Aaron confirmed this in later interviews without detailing every specific conflict, though his words made clear the issues carried real weight. The combination of creative frustration and genuine personal tension, layered on top of years of wanting to pursue a completely different kind of work, meant leaving wasn't just a career calculation, it was the only honest option left. Arclight Fabrication answered every question about why he left better than any interview ever managed to. Investors came in early, and among the names that surfaced in connection with early backing was Rawlings, continuing what had become a pattern of financially supporting former members of his orbit, regardless of how their departures had gone. Aaron assembled a team of fabricators who matched his standards, and rather than pursuing every category of custom automotive work available, he made the decision to specialize sharply. Ford vehicles from 1957 to 1979 became the focus, a specific and personally meaningful niche that had nothing to do with what any television network needed and everything to do with what he had always actually cared about. These were not quick projects built for episode deadlines. These were the builds he had wanted to pursue for years, and the reputation Arclight developed in the custom fabrication world reflected exactly that. The story of Aaron Kaufman and of Tom and Jordan before him is ultimately about a tension that runs through almost every creative enterprise where individual skill meets commercial structure. Television needs consistency and repeatability. The thing that worked last week needs to work again this week, on schedule and on budget. Serious craftsmanship in the automotive restoration world runs in the opposite direction, toward unfamiliar territory, toward projects that demand time and resist simplification. When those two forces meet directly inside the same building, something eventually gives. For Tom and Jordan, the break arrived fast and without warning, triggered by a photograph next to a Rolls-Royce that neither of them thought would matter. For Aaron, it accumulated slowly across months of creative restriction and quiet internal reckoning. What each of them built after leaving made clear, in its own way, that the exit was the right call. Some people are simply too serious about their craft to remain inside a frame that was never designed to hold them.